Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode 67. Today's guest is Sean D'Souza.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
I'm Adam Franklin, and you are listening to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. This is the show for people who love marketing on the web. As I said, today's guest is Sean D'Souza. So this is a real deep dive into some of the psychology behind marketing and really understanding some powerful stuff about, for instance, why you don't necessarily want to be selling to everybody. But you've really got to be careful as to who buys your book or your product or your course or your consulting material, because they need to do certain activities to ensure that they're going to become long-term customers. And if you don't do these certain things in the early stages of that business relationship, then you're forfeiting business further down the track. So with that little carrot, I'm going to let you know that today we're going behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments based on Sean's 15 plus years in the trenches. Plus, we look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. We confess what's failed and reveal the truth about what really works. This podcast is brought to you by our book called Web Marketing That Works, and specifically the 33 bonus marketing templates that go with it. So you can get your hands on those at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. So this episode, you're going to learn a lot from Sean. There's so much more I wanted to ask. This is fascinating to a marketer like me, who's been a student of this stuff for a decade. Sean really knows his onions, to quote Glenn Murray off one of his book reviews he did for us. But it's fascinating, and I'm sure that I'll be asking Sean back on the show very shortly to dive deeper into other aspects of this marketing. But first, let me introduce you to Sean. He has a business called Psychotactics, which he started 15 years ago. He was actually a cartoonist, as he'll share in the show, and quickly became a marketer and really immersed himself in the works of many business books and many marketing books. And listeners that know me will know that that's quite similar to my approach. So Sean is really a man after my own heart. He has been doing it for 15 years. He's a regular contributor to the Copy Blogger blog. He's got a iTunes podcast called The 3-Month Vacation. And as he'll say towards the end of the show, it's important to be taking these holidays. And I really gravitated to Sean's work. I mean, last year, I think I got to 11 weeks holiday, but it's not a holiday per se. It's 11 weeks overseas, but you're not working that whole time, but you are keeping a finger on the pulse. You are maintaining revenue. So I really wanted to talk to Sean, find out how he does all this awesome stuff that he does. And now that I've introduced you, let the show begin. Hi everyone, it's Adam Franklin here, and on the line I have Sean D'Souza. How are you, Sean?
I'm good, thank you.
And whereabouts in the world are you joining me from today?
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Well, a big hello from Sydney. It's nice to have a guest on a similar time zone after all these conversations, which I'm sure you have too, with people in the Northern Hemisphere. It makes it a lot more convenient with you just across the ditch.
Right.
So, Sean, I got into your work fairly recently, reading your headlines report and reading your articles on Copy Blogger. You've been a marketer for quite some time. Can you tell me how you got into the whole marketing space in the first place? Because it's been quite an adventure for you, I gather.
Right. I used to be a cartoonist, and I was drawing cartoons when I was in university. And, well, it was good going for quite a while, but what would happen was I would do a job and then I would go on vacation, and then when I got back, the client would say, "Oh, you weren't around, I gave it to someone else." And so I was trying to figure out, how do I do this? How do I create something, a business in cartoons, not in marketing, but by learning about marketing? And so I started studying marketing, and soon enough I gave up cartooning and started marketing. So this was back in 2000.
And who were some of the people that you learnt from in those early days, Sean?
I got a lot of books from the library. I was originally in India, and to buy a lot of those books were very expensive. But when I moved to New Zealand, I could get hundreds of books from the library. So I had a library card that allowed me to take 30 books at a time. And, so I got a lot of books from the library, but they were like most books that are published. They were not up to date with how things were moving. And so I got a lot of stuff from J. Abraham, and that's the kind of turn of the century kind of marketers that were there. But they were still not on the internet. A lot of the internet stuff I learned on the internet itself, but a lot of the sales and marketing stuff I learned from the public library.
That's interesting because J. Abraham was one of our early mentors too. I think it was 2005 when Toby and I started this business, and Jay had a conference in Sydney, and he was the first marketing consultant we ever learnt from. So fascinating that we've got the same people, same person there. So Sean, over the years you've read from books, and you've also been implementing it for yourself as well as for your clients. Is that how it's worked over the years?
Yes. The internet allowed us to do stuff that we probably couldn't have done if the world had gone on without the internet. And what we did was we were able to, play with pricing. We were able to play with how people study, how they learn, how they improve their skills. It went way beyond marketing, because marketing is just something that people could do without most of the time. I mean, it's like labor pains. I'd prefer to have the baby without the labor pains. I would prefer to sell my product without marketing. That's how most businesses feel. I mean, you look at my sister, she's a great artist, but you start talking to her about marketing and she hates it. I mean, she just doesn't want to do it. And so you really have to work out, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make marketing an integral part of what I do, but also very interesting, very exciting? And I think the internet really helped us do that because we were able to see stuff in real time.
And what is it, do you think, about people like your sister that are repulsed by marketing or would prefer not to have to do it? Is it some misconceptions with marketing, or what do you think it is?
Well, it's like a language. It's a very alien language. You grow up in, and especially if you grow up in a non-business atmosphere. Now, my wife came from a non-business atmosphere, and I would say to some extent my sister did too, because I was growing up when my parents had a business, and by the time she was growing up, my parents were pretty much on the edge of retirement. So she didn't experience that business atmosphere. My wife had the same thing, and it's very easy for people to just go out there and say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. But it's kind of like learning a skill when you're a kid, or learning a language when you're a kid, and you're just sitting there doing nothing, reading some books, playing some video games, but all the time that information on the side is going in your head. And I think that if you don't have that as a kind of side thing as you were growing up, it's a lot harder. You think, well, I have to do this, because that's what she was doing. When she was growing up, she was, being an artist, and she was learning those skills. And so that was natural to her. And marketing is this cheesy stuff. I have to sell stuff and I have to make offers, and it doesn't sit well with me.
And a lot of the marketing you see, particularly on the internet, does have an element of hype and sleaze and pressure. And you're really anti that type of approach, aren't you?
Yes. And I took so long to say yes, because the pressure is critical. Pressure creates tension, and tension is critical. If you just make any offer, it's not going to work. Anything that just exists by itself is not going to get the customer to buy something. The pressure, the tension has to exist, but the sleaze doesn't have to exist. And a lot of the claims made online are very dubious. I mean, fancy word, but here's my biggest grouse, and it's been my biggest grouse since we started out in 2000, is that a lot of people promise that, when they put out their testimonials, they say, look, this guy made 50,000, or this person got 5,000 clients because of our system. And my point is very simple. It's like getting on a flight and the pilot saying, okay, we got 3 people to the other side, and the rest of you, too bad. That's not a system. That is fluke. In fact, there's a very good chance that whoever made that 50,000 or got those customers was probably just at the edge, and it just happened to be that you showed up at that point in time. And a lot of businesses are that way. I mean, you go to if you go offline, you go to a hairdresser, And they've got all their systems in place and they're doing stuff. And then they're probably just not booking the next appointment. And you come in and you make one little change and their profits go up 50%. So I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm just saying that a lot of the sleaziness comes from the fact that it only profits or it can only change lives for a few. The rest, too bad, you're on your own.
And do you feel a lot of marketers are unscrupulous in the fact that they'll probably take on too many clients or sell their programs to people who won't necessarily see those types of results, and whereas possibly they should hold back and just sell it or just position it for those people who meet a certain set of criteria?
I would say so. I mean that, marketing shouldn't be any different from life. So in life, when we go out for a date, there is a certain amount of pressure. There is a certain amount of, okay, I'll show you my best side and do all that kind of stuff. And the same should apply for marketing. You're packaging your stuff. You're doing your stuff. But, the moment you go into that sleaze and you don't have a filter, and most of them don't have a filter. I mean, they'll go, if you want to pay me for this stuff, then I will buy. If you want to buy my stuff, you can buy it. There is no filter. And we've always had filters from the very start. I mean, we've turned down people who would pay $2,500 for a product because they didn't buy a $100 book from us. They think it's crazy, but it's worked really well for us because the clients that we have, they've been through their filter, and it makes a big difference having clients who you like to work with rather than clients who are just paying you.
And what does your business look like these days, Sean? You've been going 15 years or thereabouts. Can you talk us through how it operates and what it looks like today?
It started out as merely a consulting service. I would go in and meet with clients, and then we'd sign a contract, and then we'd go from there. And then I wrote a system called the three-prong system, and it was based on how organizations have existed for thousands of years. This includes religions and stuff like that. And when you look at the best organizations, they have three methods. One is they have products, they have consulting, and they have training. So you look at, say, any system. Let's say you look at, say, Elvis Presley, okay? At one point in time, he was doing private shows, which is consulting. He has products, which is his records and stuff. And then he was doing something akin to training, which is just kind of events that he was doing. When you look at a consulting business, that's also what they do. They can have booklets or webinars or books. That's kind of products. And then they have workshops, and that's training, and then they have consulting where they go in. And what we started doing was we looked at our whole pie, as it were, and we started to get rid of most of the consulting because that took a lot of time. And most of our business now is training-based, which is online products. So a lot has changed, but also what has changed is that we don't see marketing as this kind of just pricing and stuff. We look at it as other skills that need to be learned. So we also look at how we train people online, and we use techniques and systems that get about 80% to the finish line. I'm not saying 100%, but 80% to the finish line. And usually the 20% fall off in the first week. But after that, the people who stay to the end.
And Sean, what's your philosophy on marketing on the web?
It really depends. But my core philosophy is based on a concept called consumption. And consumption is something that nobody talks about because they don't control it. They can't control it. It's like this. You go to a bar and you order a beer, you end up drinking it. So there are 3 steps that that happened very quickly there. The first is you got attracted to the bar. You converted, you paid for it, and then you consume the beer. When you consume, both parties get the benefit because now you're going to drink a second beer either today or another day. But if you don't consume the beer, the chances are that you're not going to come back to drink the beer or to the bar. And this is true for any kind of service, training, or product. So when someone buys our book, our goal is really to get them to buy the second book, the third book, the fourth book. And the only way I can get them to buy the fourth book is to completely consume the first book. And this has been our philosophy, that it needs to be created in a way that people don't abandon the book, they don't abandon the course, they don't abandon anything that we give to them, that they buy from us. So you have to design it.
So you design it with the idea of having customers for life because you're trying to make it easy for them to consume and therefore learn and action and implement the information that you're sharing in that. That's a really interesting point because, I mean, so many people just see the sale as the end of the journey, hey, and they go, well, I've sold my book, I've sold my course, you're on your own now. But you make a great point that I hadn't thought through so much until you mentioned it, but getting people actually all the way through it is powerful because it puts the onus on us as marketers to actually have the customer's best interest at heart, which I think marketers should, but as you're saying, not everybody does that.
There are two parts to it. The first is that not everyone does that. And the second thing is that not everyone can do that because they don't know how to do it. They have to understand how consumption works. And it works on a three-part system, which is intimidation, the isolation, and then implementation. So to get someone to the stage of implementation, you have to figure out what is intimidating them. Say you're doing a course. Maybe you have great content. Maybe the course is on a forum. They've never been to the forum before. When people do our course, sometimes we spend a week teaching them how to use the forum, how to get quickly from one section to another, how to make a quote. You might think, well, they've been in a forum before, surely, but this is a different forum. It's like landing in a different city. You have to go through the steps of intimidation. And this is what the iPhone did really well. I mean, if you had a Motorola phone, you would know exactly what I was talking about. One of those flip phones. They had so many buttons to get to something, and then the iPhone comes in. All the intimidation is gone because you can give anyone an iPhone, even if they've never seen it before, and they just have to do one thing, which is press that button. So what's happened is once the intimidation goes out, what you get is isolation, and that's one button. Now I can press that button. That leads to implementation. But then at that next stage, there is intimidation again. How do we remove or reduce the intimidation? How do we get to isolation? And then we get to implementation. And it's a constant process. I mean, we've had, say, the article writing course since 2006. Every time we do it, people come up with, this is hassling me, that is hassling me. And usually people say, well, this is the course. Too bad. But our course changes about 20% while the course is happening. And it's happening right now. It's changing about 20%. By the time we're done, it'll be a different course. This is why we've never had any problems selling out courses. I mean, we don't have any affiliates. We don't have any AdWords, no joint ventures, nothing. We sell out $2,000 and $3,000 courses in 20 minutes.
So something's right there with your approach. I really appreciate how much of a system and how much of a process goes into these courses and these principles that you've been talking to us about, the product consulting and training, and then the intimidation, isolation, and implementation shows such a deep level of understanding of, I guess, human behavior as well as marketing, which I guess are so intertwined. It's fascinating. I was actually watching an old video on YouTube the other day, and it was from New Media Expo in 2010, and it was a panel discussion with Brian Clark, Sonia Simone, and Darren Rouse, aka ProBlogger. And Brian Clark mentioned your name and talked about this Bikini Principle of Content marketing or information marketing. And I was really fascinated by it. Would you mind sharing with us the Bikini Principle?
Yep. And this is I have lots of philosophies, but this is another philosophy, which is that we're so keen on trying to shield our information that we don't realize that people don't get it. So when I wrote the book, The Brain Audit, I used to go out and speak at events, and usually the speaking engagement was for half an hour. Now, in that half an hour, what I describe in The Brain Audit is what I call 7 red bags. There are 7 red bags that you put on a flight, and then when you get off at the other side, essentially you have to get your 7 red bags, but 1 red bag goes missing. And then the question is, when do you leave the airport? So the question that would always arise at the presentation was, well, what are the red bags? Because I would only tell them about 3 red bags because that's all that time would allow me. But I was also afraid that if I gave them all the 7 red bags, they would not be interested in the information. And one guy badgered me to death. And that's when I decided, okay, here you go. Here are the 7 red bags. And we had the best sales ever on that day. And I thought, wait a second, I've given away almost everything and they're coming back for more. And then when I sat down and thought about it, when we had a brain audit workshop, the people who would come to the workshop were the people who read a 180-page book. The people who came back for consulting were the people who came to the workshop and read the book. The people who then wanted to become a brain audit trainer, if we wanted to do that, were people who read the book, came to the workshop, and did the any other kind of course or training or whatever. And then I realized that even if you were to kind of give away everything, it's not that your audience understands that everything. I mean, I was just talking to my wife this morning. I said, we have a headline course. It's very successful because we don't teach just headlines. We teach you why the headline works and why, like how internet marketers say, oh, you have to test your headlines. Nonsense. You don't have to test anything. It's like English. When I speak to you, you understand and you react accordingly. And if you write headlines with consumer knowledge in mind, you can get results. Sure, one headline can do better than the other one. But if you wrote 100 headlines, every one of them should work. And so here I am again thinking, oh, if I write all this stuff and I put a book on Amazon, everyone's going to buy it. No one's going to buy the course. Nonsense. That's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to buy the course. If I have a live event, they'll come for the event. And that's exactly what happens. I mean, I went to a Sting concert the other day. I've got all Sting songs. I've got his live versions. I've got his version in Berlin. I've got, why go to another concert to hear the same songs? Because that's how I am. That's how you are.
And so just to tie it back to the bikini, you can show pretty much everything, but they still want to, that only increases their desire to see the remainder,
correct.
Right? Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
So across your 15 odd years of marketing, you sound like you do a lot of experiments as well as understanding the human psychology and behavior behind everything. What I'd like to do now is explore some of the things that do work well and then contrast them with things that haven't gone well and maybe even some complete shockers that either you've seen or that you've done yourself. Do you mind if we start with some things that have worked really well in terms of marketing experiments that you've done over the years?
Let me speak conceptually rather than specifically, simply because I can't think of anything right now. But conceptually, one of the best things that has happened to us was for us to ask for feedback. And when we are talking about feedback, we're not just saying, okay, just write me a testimonial. No. The testimonial is different from feedback. Feedback is the sound you get when two mics kind of come into the same sphere. That's feedback. It's screechy. It's terrible. You don't want it. You want to get rid of it as soon as possible. What we do is, if you go to our website, it says, if you find a mistake, email us and one person a month gets $50 worth of stuff. We have this in all our courses. We have this in all our workshops. We have this in all our training. People have to spend, in our courses, one of the assignments at the end of the course is to tell us everything that was wrong. But as the course is going on, people have a section where they can give their feedback. People come back and they say, well, I don't want this, I want that. I don't like this, It becomes a restaurant where the chef is having to move all the time. Now, you might say that's very uncomfortable for me, and it might be uncomfortable for a lot of people. But for us, it has worked amazingly well because we're able to fix things as we go along. And this is how software developers work. You get the software, it's not complete, it's never complete. Photoshop is always work in progress. And they keep getting these bugs from developers and users and stuff, and they keep improving it. And that's why they keep selling it year after year after year. I mean, we should be done with Photoshop. It could do fabulous stuff 10 years ago. But no, it's the feedback that's helping them move ahead. So to me, the biggest thing has been feedback.
And how about things that have not gone so well, Sean? What's failed and what can we do to potentially learn from those failures?
Whenever we've not treated the client with the same courtesy as we would expect, we've kind of run into trouble. So, for instance, we have a membership site, and in the membership site, there's a forum. So the membership site is at 5000 BC. And one point, very early in our career, there were hardly any posts on the forum. Now there are over 250,000. But at that point in time, there was nothing. And I said, if you do so many posts, I'll kind of give you this kind of prize. And the customers were like, no, that's not it. That's not how we work. We're not here to be treated that way. We don't ask questions because we want a prize. We ask questions because we want your help. And so every time we've gone against the human concept of a date. This is a date. How would I behave on a date? When I went on a date, would I have a pop-up on my date? Would I suddenly have this crazy thing that flashed in your face? When we benchmark stuff and when we look at the stuff that has gone wrong, it's always been because we've had a lousy date. We've done stuff that we would never do in real life. That's when it goes wrong.
Interesting. And any absolute shockers that either you completely didn't expect or that just blew up in your face, and there's a big lesson there? If not, we can move to the next question.
By mistake, we have sent out the same email to each person 65 times. Yeah, those are technology mistakes. But the thing is that we've never tried to. We've always believed in this philosophy that, we need to behave like real people. And that's the shocker has always been when we've either mucked around with technology that we haven't tried, or when we've kind of bought into someone else's philosophy that actually didn't gel with us at the very start, and we just say, okay, let's do this, and it doesn't work. So I wish I could think of something, but I can't think of. There haven't been many shockers. We've had a few technology problems, but nothing else really.
It's interesting that you do try and treat it like you're a real person, which of course you are. I remember when I did my first newsletter 10 years ago when we just started our business, and I remember it vividly because I triple-checked it, quadruple-checked it, and I hit send, and I was waiting for the email to come back into my inbox, and when it arrived it said, Dear Adam, and then I realized right then that I'd sent Dear Adam to all 700 people on my list, and my heart dropped. I went, oh man, what do I do now? Anyway, So I did what a human being would do and sent one back 5 minutes later, apologized and called them by their real name. But these things do happen, right? And I always remind people to, as you said, be a human being. And if things go wrong, apologize, move on, and try not to do it again. So Sean, you've been going 15 years. A lot has changed in that time. If you were starting now, knowing what you know, what advice would you have for somebody starting out on their marketing journey today?
The advice that I'd give to any marketer starting out is twofold. The first is really get to understand, really learn the skills that you need. So for instance, let's say that you want to write a book or you want to do a webinar or a podcast or whatever. You want to make sure that you learn how to write so that your book is outstanding. Why is this important? This is important because everyone is writing articles. Everyone is doing webinars. Everyone is doing everything. And the quality is what's going to make you stand out. In a market where there's so much competition and so much noise, you have to be much better than the next person. And so learning those skills is critical. Making your podcast, stand head and shoulders over the next one is critical. So once you have that skill, you can start your marketing, but this is where you're headed. You're headed to create real art instead of just another piece of marketing information. And the second thing is that as quickly as possible, you want to make sure that the customer buys a product from you. Now, this product might not be $50 and you're not going to be a millionaire overnight, but it might be just $2.99. The point is that in today's marketplace, there's so much free stuff that if you put out more free stuff, yes, you can get people. But the moment someone buys a product from us, it's Hotel California. They can never check out. They can never leave. So that's the kind of philosophy that you want to have. You want to have a situation where you have great product or work towards great product, and then you want clients to buy and keep coming back, because free has been kind of overestimated and it has worked and it continues to work, but it's a lot noisier out there.
Sean, you've also got a podcast called the 3-Month Vacation, and I gather that's part of your philosophy as well. One, can you talk us through, I guess, why you started going on these 3-month vacations and how that fits in with your work and life?
Well, most people think that work is nice, and a vacation is nice. But a vacation is critical to work. When you travel, your whole mindset changes. You get to experience things that you haven't. But most importantly, your batteries recharge. When you're working, you're spending a lot of your energy just getting going, as it were. And when you go on vacation, those batteries recharge. And the point is that most people that I know of love their work, especially entrepreneurs. They love their work. And if you keep working endlessly, what happens is you get jaded and then your work starts to suffer. Now, that's only one side of it. The other side is that if you go on vacation, you tend to work for X number of months and then you have to go on vacation. So you become more efficient when you go on vacation because you have to finish all your stuff before you leave, before you get on that plane. When we haven't gone on vacation, what has happened is instead of doing the work in 3 months, we've done it in 4 months. So we've been more tired at the end of 4 months. We haven't taken the vacation. I don't see the upside. Now, the trick is to go on vacation but not lose revenue. And that's really what the 3-month vacation podcast is about. It's about the systems and the methods and the mindset that you need to have so that you're not losing revenue, because that's how I started out in marketing, because I was going on vacation and losing revenue. And that's not what I wanted to do. So that's where the 3-month vacation came from.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you so much for coming on the call. We'll call it a day there. How can listeners find out more about you and your business?
There are 2 ways. If you want to listen to the podcast, it's at iTunes and pretty much everywhere else. But let me just send you to one place, which is psychotactics.com/magic. That's psychotactics.com/magic. And if you want to get the newsletter, which I recommend you do, then you can go to psychotactics.com.
Sean, thank you so much for sharing that with our listeners, and you have yourself a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on my chat with Sean D'Souza. We did actually have a few technical difficulties with the old Wi-Fi, but hopefully the amazing editing job will have concealed a lot of that. Geez, I enjoyed Sean's chat as a very keen student of marketing and a keen practitioner of marketing and also ethical marketing. I found Sean's approach just to be so refreshing and eye-opening and so encouraging that, there's financial reward with that approach as well. What I particularly enjoyed and will be trying to apply more and more in the online programs that Toby and I release is that whole idea of breaking it down and understanding that there's intimidation, isolation, and implementation, and reducing that intimidation factor. For example, if there's 15 modules of a program, that could be quite intimidating for someone. I know our courses, I think the biggest one is 9 modules, but even so, that can be quite intimidating, and I hadn't thought of it that way. So I'll be looking at ways to break down that intimidation factor to then help them isolate what they need to do so that they can actually help them implement the material in our courses. Because you made a very good point. If people buy the book or buy the program or whatever and don't actually read it or implement it, then they're not going to come back. So you're leaving a hell of a lot of value and business on the table if you don't actually have your customers' interests at heart and make it easy for them, or as easy as possible for them, to digest your work and also be able to implement it and see results. And I truly believe that Bikini philosophy or Bikini principle that he spoke about, giving away as much as you can and not holding anything back, because the more people know, the more it increases their desire to know more. And very interesting that he said people that had read his book, had been to his courses, are then the ones that want to do private consulting as well. And I've actually noticed a similar trend with Bluewire customers. It's very rare that somebody will hire us or come along to our events if they haven't already been reading our newsletter for a long time or haven't been using our templates or haven't actually even read our book. So the more people get to know you, it seems, the more that they want to do business with you. And I'm glad that we've been applying that philosophy of giving away a lot of the tools and templates that we have, because it certainly does seem to be working from our point of view too. So anyway, I do hope to get Sean back on the show. There's plenty more I want to ask him. We might geek out a little bit harder on the marketing stuff next time and the psychology stuff. I do love it and I do want to find out more. Until then, let me just say that this show was brought to you by our book called Web Marketing That Works, and brought to you by the 33 free marketing templates that go with it. So get your hands on those over at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. My intent, and Toby's intent when he hosts his shows, is to deliver actionable advice. So we do love your feedback. As Sean said, that awful static when two microphones get too close together. If you've got feedback that might make us uncomfortable, shoot it our way. We want to improve. We want to make it a better experience for you, the listener, and your questions are also welcome as well. So please drop me a line. I'm at adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au, or simply tweet me at Franklin_Adam. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, I'd love it if you could leave us a review on iTunes, and I will see you on the next show. Thank you.